July 26, 2023. This is the S&P 500 E-Futures Mini on the 2000 tick chart using the NinjaTrader 8 platform. You can look down at the descriptions below to see where I took my trades as well as where I saw setups. I actually didn't take any trades today, nothing. I mean, there were some trades I kind of wish I did take, but it was actually in hindsight once I realized the setup was valid or clean enough. And unfortunately, I'm not at that level yet to recognize those kind of trades in real time. So there was a big piece of economic data that came out today. It's the FOMC Press Conference as well as the FOMC Rate Decision. And it came out at 11 o'clock Pacific Standard. That's the rate decision. Everybody was pretty much assuming that the Feds were going to raise the rate by another quarter point, which they did. And then the big mover was at 11:30 Pacific Standard, was when Fed Chair Powell comes out, adds a little bit of color, kind of gives you an idea of his thinking, what the direction of the Fed chief and the Fed presidents are going to probably do next month. And as you can see, the market took it pretty well and rallied pretty hard, but it didn't really take because as you can see, it sold off again pretty much all the way back down to the low of the day and then recovered somewhat. Overall trading was kind of in this big range. This is the pre-market high. Technically, the pre-market low is down here, but once prices kind of chopped and touched this about 3 times, I dragged the overall trading range to be down here. And as you can see, there's an overshoot up here, and a matching overshoot at the bottom. I also saw this kind of an overlapping trading range, kind of a trading range within a bigger trading range within a bigger trading range. And that's kind of where I saw setups as well as where I thought, potential trades were. Overall volume was very, very slow up until the FOMC rate decision came out. So the first, you know, almost 3.5 hours was very, very slow going. And then it kind of got wild and then it kind of settled down. So I'm going to go through the trades right now. And let's see. Okay, so in the pre-market, it's hard to really know what's going on. It looked like it was going to be in a trading range from the pre-market high to the pre-market low. So originally I was working with something like that. I thought there was going to be a bounce and move back up to test the highs. Fortunately, it didn't do that. Things were very choppy. You can tell this is 45.90 and this is 45.86. So this is actually a 4-point range. When you're trying to scalp out 1 point, if prices are moving from the highs to the low in 4 points, scalping out 1 point or 6 ticks is kind of asking a lot, mainly because, trying to scalp out pretty much 1.5, points out of 4 is asking almost 50% of the move, which can happen, but it's just kind of a little bit more dicier. You have to be more particular about the setups. So that's what I was trying to be today. So when you zoom in like this, it's deceiving. You think like, wow, look at these large candles, but you can tell this is in half-point increments. So the first setup I saw was actually a new high here, clearly a new high, comes down, makes a first entry long, all the way up to here, pulls back, makes a second entry long. So the second entry long is a decent candle. It's a very nice bullish candle. It closed above the EMA, but the EMA doesn't really come into play at this point just because it's flattening out. You can tell the EMA is chopping right through the middle of the price action. So it's hard to really give a lot of belief that the bulls or the bears are in charge. So when it chopped right through, I wasn't really sure, but I did see this as a second entry long, potentially a trade here. But I looked at it and actually you don't quite get 6 ticks out of it. You get only 1 point. So you're 4 ticks. You wouldn't have been able to scalp out and you would have probably gotten stopped out. So I'm glad I didn't take this trade because I was a little leery. If you look at all the price action previously, it's very spiky, very indecisive. So I left that one alone. The second trade I saw was actually a new high here. And at this point, I thought there was a potential trading range, which is this blue channel here. This yellow one didn't exist yet, but I did suspect some kind of resistance up here touching these 2 touches. And so just working off the blue one in real time at the time, I saw a new high here, first entry long, pulls back, this second entry long. Now this is kind of scary because this is technically the signal bar of your second entry long. It's super duper duper bearish. It is kind of bouncing off a support right here, but the support's a little inconsistent because you did see a break out below and it pulls back in, and you did have like an overshoot up here. So it came down, it bounced off, and it you can look at the energy and the power spent to push this all the way back up. But when you see that, you have to keep in mind this is actually only 2 points because this is at 45.86-ish, 45.86, 85.75, and then 45.87.75 is right here. So this is only really a 2-point move, but the price action was very slow today. So in that context, it looked like it took the whole thing back. Even though it's a bad signal bar, the second entry long is here. It's a strong reversal off the bottom of this range, and there is just enough room to scalp out to the top. But I saw this and I didn't really want to take the trade just because seeing some violent move like that kind of made me more cautious. Then price action continues to move. It breaks out of this blue trading range, flushes down, comes down, and you don't really have any confirmation that this is a recent low. So there's no real trade or real key entry point to take a basis off of. So I left it alone. It kind of went up. You did see one leg up, pull back, a second leg up, and then a consolidation, and then a flash back down. But there's no clean setup that I could take or feel confident in taking. When prices continue moving up, it looks like it makes one leg now, pulls back, and makes a second leg. And all through here, you don't really get any clean second entries to take a trade off of. But when it came up to here, it confirmed the top of this trading range because you have one touch, two touch, three touch. So I for sure believe that there's a resistance here. Now, off of this, I wasn't 100% sure what the bottom of the trading range was. At the time, I was thinking maybe the bottom of the trading range was right here because it looked like it fit pretty well and there was an overshoot. And I was thinking of moving back in, so at least I know the top with third confirmation looked good. And let's just play off of this channel for now, not this channel, but this range for now. I treat this as an overshoot. Here, I don't really see any good clean setup yet, and this price action unfolds. Is you actually get your first entry long here, comes back down, and here you actually get your second entry long. But the second entry long, it's a sketchy setup because here you obviously got this huge sell-off. Now I'm thinking potentially there's a symmetric move coming up, but this candle, it being the signal bar for a second entry long, isn't very clean. Now, if only this candle actually closed a little bit higher and closed bullish, then I would be more confident to take a trade. Then this trigger bar doesn't give you much confidence either because even though it closed bullish, it's way down here. Now, you only have one touch, two touch, and so you believe that this might be the bottom of the trading range, but it's not as firm as the top here. So I had to let this particular trade go. And I said, well, if there's a higher low confirmation, then there might be another push back up into this trading range, or perhaps the trading range I drew is a little bit wider, maybe down to here. In either case, the second entry long isn't strong enough for me to take this trade, so I definitely want to see a higher low. Prices continue moving up, and you get your higher low right here. Flashes down, so you're still looking for the higher low. Boom. This is like a strong push down and pushes all the way back up, and it closed kind of like a doji, where it's, the open and the close are right at the same. I saw this as a potential higher low, comes back, makes a double bottom, breaks down. This now makes a new higher low. And it's getting a little confusing, so I'm just kind of abandoning looking for the higher low because it made a first entry short, second entry short failure, made a first entry long, but you don't really get a higher low that's clean except right here, but it's pretty much matching the lows. So I've just kind of abandoned the idea of taking a long at this point or taking a short because you definitely don't want to short into this potential support right here. So I'm just kind of sitting on my hands. This flashes down. This is right pretty close to when the FOMC rate announcement comes out. And in this area, you want to be very careful because prices could chop around. A lot of traders lining up to hear what the rate decision is. Mostly everybody already knew they're going to raise a quarter point, but they could still surprise us, and nobody can really predict the future. Even if they didn't surprise us, prices could have flashed down. And then it flashed immediately all the way back up. So look at the power of this candle. It engulfs not only this red bearish bar, but all these candles previously. So this is a really strong move up. It'd be very dicey to try to take any trades in this area. You'd have to keep your stop losses or stop limit orders very wide. And that's not something I want to do. So I definitely just left it alone. And then prices, and you can also tell, I want to point out, it's very interesting. This is the 10 o'clock hour and this is the 11 o'clock hour. So within this 1 hour time frame, you probably only have maybe like 20 candles, which isn't that much price action. So this is definitely just wait on the sidelines and see what happens, unless you just decided you want to gamble. And prices continue chopping up. And here you're getting close to when Fed Powell is going to come out and speak. But I did see a new high here, first entry long. You technically have a second entry long that formed here. So when this candle forms, I was thinking there's potentially a second entry long because their support really could be right here, ignoring this crazy overshoot or this breakout pullback. Actually, this failed breakout. I was thinking if I put a trade right here, the next couple candles, because it's about 2 minutes before Fed Chair Powell comes out to speak, could be dicey, but I saw the second entry long here. Good signal bar. There's enough room to both the EMA and to the top, but it's just kind of a gamble risk. Looks like it would have worked in this case. Of course, you don't know that's going to always work, so I'm glad I just stayed out of it. It overshot here, and I'm wondering if it's going to have a matching overshoot here. So actually, it creates a second entry long. It's very subtle, very tight. New high here, first entry long, second entry long. It also created a failed second entry short, because if you take the low here, you have the first entry short breaks below, EMA holds, pushes back up, comes back down, and makes a second entry short here, confirm, and it fails on this candle. So this actually might have been a trade worth taking, but it's a bad signal bar for the second entry long, but it's a good signal bar for the failed second entry short because it engulfed this entire candle. The thing that gave me hesitation is Fed Chair Powell is in the middle of talking right now. On top of that, it's breaking out of this trading range, so it could be a failed breakout and come back down. I did draw this ascending channel going up, and it is bouncing off of here. So it technically is following all the rules. But the factor that's kind of throwing things off is Fed Chair Powell is giving color, and you don't really know how the market's going to react. I also don't like that when you see this candle form, you're going to be buying at the highs of a potential failed breakout. So you have conflicting ideas that the second entry long isn't looking like a very nice setup. Second entry short that failed doesn't really look like a nice setup. So, I mean, it's a better setup than maybe the second entry long. And both of these are telling you to go long, potentially at the high, because the second entry long, you're going to look for a long trade, and the failed second entry short, you're going to look for a long trade. So there's two things going for you. This is potentially a channel going up, so you might have some key entry point here. But again, you're working with a catalyst that you can't really predict what's going to happen. So I decided to leave it alone. Turns out it would have worked out. And now it overshoots this potential ascending channel, and it dwells outside. And so when it comes back and breaks down through the other side, I'm watching and wondering if it's going to come back up and test this extreme. Comes back, chops around, and here you get a new high, first entry long, second entry long. You also have a new low here, first entry short, potential second entry short here. So you don't really know. I'm thinking it made one push up, second push up. Maybe it's played out. Maybe it's going to actually correct back into this gray, large trading range. So I was thinking of having an order ready because it closed below the EMA. I'm thinking of going short because the second entry short has set up. The failed second entry long hasn't set up yet. And this now confirms the second entry long has failed. But the problem with this trade setup is it's already really close to this identified and somewhat respected low. So you'd be shorting right into the support for potential bounce. So I thought, I'm not going to take this trade. I'm going to wait for a lower high confirmation. Get a lower high confirmation right here, but it also closed right along the support. That made me pause. If only this lower high actually broke lower than these two supports, ideally below this guy, then you would be more confident that prices are actually trying to sell off now. But since it closed right at this point, it's hard for me to take this trade to go short, even though it's confirmed right here, just because it could potentially bounce off of here and I could just be in this blue trading range. Looks like it breaks out below. And if I did take this trade, I would have gotten the scalp. But again, in real time, it's hard to make that determination. It's a little fuzzy right now. And prices continue chopping. It's clearly outside of this blue trading range now, even if you extended it out to here. And it's potentially in this descending green channel coming down. So I didn't really see any particular setup. And then you get to this trade. You have a new high here, the first entry long right there, creates a second entry long. So it's confirmed second entry long. It hits this EMA. And I'm wondering, when I saw this unfold in real time, is there a potential trade here to go short? Because there's enough room potentially to get down here. So here, this is a great signal bar. EMA is holding prices down. it did have some violations early on, so you would have to base the strength of this setup off of whether you think the EMA is actually flattening or it's actually starting to trend down. That's a good signal bar. I've looked at it. I thought it was a good trade, but I hesitated. And of course, I would have gotten filled on this candle. This one would have probably made me a little bit nervous, thinking, okay, maybe I'm wrong in my setup. And then, of course, this one would have flashed down and gotten me the scalp. But again, the setup wasn't clean enough for my experience level to feel confident taking that trade. Then it breaks out of the green channel, flashes down, and I'm just sitting on my hands again. This has been more price action right in this area right here than the last few hours because it's been very slow on FOMC meeting days. Most people are just kind of sitting on hands, not trying to take anything ambitious. So it usually is characteristically slow. You see that in all the FOMC meeting rate decision days. Prices continue chopping. I saw this as a potential resistance. Well, not yet, but I also saw a second entry long failure here. It's a new high, first entry long, second entry long. It fails right here. Now, this one I thought was a little aggressive. EMA is holding prices down now. It's confirmed. It is also flattening though. And you don't really get a nice clean second entry short. You get a second entry short here, but it also fails. So it could have been a trap here. But you get a second entry long that fails here. And if I did want to take my entry, I'd have to put it one tick below. I probably would have gotten filled. And my stop would have been one tick above this candle. And I would have just been going for 1 point. And clearly from here down to here, there's enough room for just 1 point scalp. So this is potentially a trade that would have worked it. Well, it did work out, but it would have been worth considering. But I've been watching this price action, and the longer you wait, the longer, and it gets closer to the end of the day, the longer that I wait, the more reluctant I am to take a less than perfect setup, just because I don't want to start so late in the day with a red trade, then feel anxious, feel like, well, taking no trades is definitely better than taking a red trade, and I'd be trying to get it back. So I can tell those feelings are starting to come up that I decided I'm just going to just keep watching and not be too ambitious. Prices continue moving down, comes up, it forms this resistance here. So it actually has a first entry short. You get a second entry short here, but it's a terrible signal bar. It's a little confusing. You don't really know where the bottom is. It's either down here or potentially down here. So you don't know if this is really a trading range so much as a resistance up here. Then it confirms the resistance is here. So clearly I feel confident if the setup is coming up that's clean, you can short if it comes up to this line, but you don't really know how low to go. This gray one is based off, this gray trading range, remember, is based off of the 3 touches here. And even late in the day, it's not respecting it as much because it broke down below and came back in. So it respects it sometimes and other times it doesn't. So that's not a good enough support to base trades off of, in my opinion. So I just waited. Then prices break out above, it's getting choppy again. It's going into the last 30 minutes of the day, goes into this consolidation, breaks down. It gets a little confusing. Now, this is the last 10 minutes starting from here at 12:50, and you can see how many candles, how much price action there is. It's a little bit rushed. So definitely there might have been a setup here, but I was reluctant to see or take any trades in that region just because prices here are people closing out their positions. You definitely don't want to get red because you have no time to try to reconcile it by the end of the day. And I just didn't want to, you've already waited so long for this day with no trades. There's nothing wrong with taking a no trade day, which is kind of what happened with me today. It was a very interesting FOMC meeting day. Pretty much prices just stayed in this gigantic range. There were some setups. I think overall I only saw maybe these two as potential trades. Of course, I didn't recognize them in real time. And as things progress, you'll see more of these probably in the next FOMC meeting. But overall, price action was a little bit, I guess, I wouldn't say confusing, but it wasn't as clean as it has been at other times. So hopefully that was helpful.